With us now is Mark Regev, Senior Advisor to Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, former UK Ambassador, or I should say Israel Ambassador here in the UK. Thank you for joining us, Mr Regev. Your reaction to what we heard from Mr Elder this morning, if you would please, sir.
Obviously, it seems very logical. Why can't Israel and Hamas just get on? Yes, but it's forgotten that Hamas says that my country needs to be annihilated, that Hamas says every Israeli, every Jew should be murdered, that Hamas says any Arab who negotiates with Israel and, heaven forbid, makes peace with Israel is a traitor to Islam and to the Arab world. These people are extremists. These people are not interested in peace or coexistence. Don't take my word for it. Quote them. It was the Hamas leadership that said they would, given the opportunity, given the capability, they would do the October 7th massacre of Israeli civilians again and again and again. Their words, not mine.
The UN Secretary-General, Gutierrez, said the situation is fast deteriorating into a catastrophe. It is a dire humanitarian situation, isn't it?
I do, but he is wrong on one central issue. And of course, we have to do everything we can to alleviate humanitarian suffering, and we are doing. But when calling for a ceasefire with Hamas, the UN Secretary-General is basically saying Hamas will stay in power. And that's not a recipe for peace. That's a recipe for further violence, because as we've just said, Hamas is not interested in peace. Hamas is not interested in coexistence. Hamas is interested in murder, in violence. They say they believe permanent war with Israel. So it's an illusion. The goal must be to destroy Hamas, to end its rule over the Gaza Strip. That will create an opportunity for a better future for Israelis and for Gazans as well.
While you're doing that, could you not open more crossings so that more aid could get into Gaza?
So I'm happy to announce this morning that we've opened up Kerem Shalom for the checking of trucks so we can get more aid into Gaza. We are working very, very strongly to try to augment the aid going in. We don't want to see unnecessary humanitarian suffering. In fact, I can tell you the trucks that have been not only authorized but already checked by Israel, and of course those inspections are necessary because we don't want to see Hamas bringing in weapons illicitly into Gaza. But trucks that have been both authorized and already inspected are being held up in southern Gaza. And one has to ask the following questions. Because Hamas knows that the humanitarian issue is creating international pressure for a ceasefire, maybe they're not interested in helping their own people. Maybe they're not interested in alleviating suffering. And that's a serious problem and shows exactly what Hamas is all about.
That's not actually opening another crossing, though, is it, Mr Regev, or am I wrong there?
No, we've opened up a Kerem Shalom for inspecting so we can get more material, more foodstuffs checked before it goes into Gaza. As you know, the Israeli government has said clearly in the first week of the war we place no restrictions whatsoever on food, medicine and water going into the Gaza Strip. From our point of view, it can go in without any limitation whatsoever.
Why not open more crossings?
So that's a difficult issue because that has security issues as well. The Israeli-Hamas border, the Israeli-Gaza border, I should say, is a border of war. The Egyptian crossing is a border of peace, and therefore it can function normally. To ask an Israeli crossing to function while rockets are being fired at Israel, including at the crossings, that's maybe a bridge too far at this moment.
Mr Regev, talk to me about the pictures that we saw on social media over the weekend of Palestinian men being stripped to their underwear. The International Red Cross saying that all those detained should be treated with humanity and dignity. Doesn't look particularly humane or dignified, does it?
So I understand the pictures look terrible, but you have to understand why we asked these men to take off their shirts. Hamas is one of the people who invented the idea of the suicide bomber with the dynamite tied to his body. And of course, when taking prisoners, we are asking people to take off their shirts because we don't want a situation where a Hamas terrorist raises his hands supposedly to surrender and then detonates himself and kills our people. So this is a natural precaution, a logical precaution, and now we're making sure there's a new thing to make sure that there'll be for Palestinian Hamas prisoners, that there'll be clothing available for them once they have been checked. But the initial stage where they'll have to take off their shirts, we don't want suicide vests being exploded with our people around.
As we saw, more than their shirts had to be taken off. Several of the men were identified as civilians, including a journalist. What would you say to them? Many of them have now been released, of course, without any charge.
Exactly, Kay. When people have been rounded up in areas of combat, men of military age, and after an investigation, if they are shown to be not involved in Hamas, they are released. We don't see the civilian population of Gaza as a target of our operation. We're out there to get Hamas. And I think so far the majority of people we have arrested have been associated with Hamas, and therefore we want to interrogate them. We can get vital information, also information about where our hostages are from these people. But of course, if you're not involved, people are released, and as you've reported, they've been released quickly.
You mentioned the hostages. The final question, if I may, please, Mr. Regev. Qatari Prime Minister warning that Israel's bombardment of Gaza is narrowing the window for a deal to free the hostages. What would you say in response?
We respectfully disagree. If there is a chance to get more hostages out, it's only because of the military pressure that Israel is applying to Hamas. Hamas are not suddenly going to become humanitarians. They're not going to suddenly become choir boys. They're not going to suddenly decide, well, we've broken international law by taking these people hostage, by abducting them. We're going to release them all. No, Hamas will respond to pressure. And that pressure is being applied today by the Israeli Defense Forces.
We must leave it there. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Quick look at the weather.